Hey, what's happening guys? Dave Brown here, and today we're going to learn how to make and place bar chords. Definitely tends to be a hurdle for a lot of beginner players, even intermediate players. I've had students that have been playing for years that come to me and they don't even know what they're making. So we're going to learn how to make them, what's the best way to go about them, what they are, how to find them, all that good stuff. So by the end of this video, you're going to know how to make two options for pretty much any chord you want to look up. And if you're not really feeling comfortable with it yet, there's going to be a playlist so I can quiz you on all these things and keep you real nice and sharp. So grab your git and let's get going. So there are a whole bunch of bar chords that can be made, and really anything that requires two or more strings to be held down by the same finger qualifies as a bar chord. But today we're only really concerned with two different bar chord shapes. They each have a major and minor option. So there's going to be four shapes we're dealing with today. These two shapes are referred to as the E and the A shapes, and what they are is 2/5 of the cage system. And if you've never heard of the cage system, let me just walk you through it really quick. Again, cage stands for C, A, G, E, and D. Those are the five shapes that repeat up the neck. Those are really only the five shapes that the guitar has, and that everything else is a deviation from it. Perhaps that's an oversimplification, but that's generally a good way to kind of start and reduce the equation so it's not so confusing. So the concept of the cage system is if you take three notes in a chord, for instance C, E, and G, and you were just to place them everywhere over across the neck, you would start to see these familiar patterns kind of emerge. So for instance, if I look in this area right here, and I see, it kind of looks like a C, there's some extra notes, but yeah, no, that's a C, okay, cool. Then if I kind of look at this area right here and I move up the neck and I place the capo, looks like an A, sounds like a C. If I continue up the neck, looks like a G, sounds like a C. Move up the neck, this looks like an E, sounds like a C. Looks like a D, sounds like a C. So you can see C, A, G, E, and D are really just the five shapes repeating up the neck, and that's the specific order in which they occur. It doesn't matter what key you're in. Every single chord can be played with five different synonyms, physical synonyms: a C shape, an A shape, a G shape, an E shape, or a D shape. But there's a caveat to that. Not all of these are going to be practical bar chord shapes. Like I would never tell a student to make that chord. Like that's ridiculous. You're going to hurt yourself. It's not a practical grab in real time. So if we take a look at the others, the C shape's kind of okay. You know, you'll see that come up every now and then, but it's really just the E and the A shapes that come up. So those are the ones that you're going to want to get comfortable placing. So let's talk about how to make them and place them now. So before you even get going, I'd really recommend just trying to see if you can hold down two strings. And if you can get two strings, try to get three strings. And if you can get three strings, try to get four. And as you move up to more and more strings, you probably start on the flat of your finger, but as you move up, you're going to want to roll to the side of your index finger because that side is closer to the bone, and that's what the strings need. They need something hard to rest against so that there's no way to move. They're clamped and they're just doing their thing. When you're kind of on the fat of the finger, there's plenty of skin to kind of, it just doesn't work, right? So once you're able to kind of hold all those down, and this might take a couple days, this might take a couple weeks, this might take months. Some people struggle with it for years if they're not really on it all the time and making it happen. A lot of factors go into it, how often you're practicing. A huge factor is the action on your guitar. Are the strings close enough to the neck? You know, if they're very far off, it's just going to make your life difficult. Like you're going to struggle and hurt yourself, and it's just so make sure your guitar is set up properly. That's definitely a huge help. Electrics are easier to play. They tend to have better action if they're set up properly. So maybe even start there, but you know, if you can get good at an acoustic, kind of like swinging a couple bats before you go up to the plate, electric's going to feel that much easier. So for the E shape, a lot of people want to kind of start with their first finger and bar the whole thing right off the bat and then fix the rest of it. It's actually going to be easier to start off with the other fingers. So again, just to reiterate, because a lot of students, you know, they'll get these shapes confused. These are going to be based off the open chords. So just, if we're making an E chord, there's your E chord. If we're making an E minor chord, there's an E minor. And what these are doing is we're just replacing the fingers and kind of moving them up. And then our first finger's acting like that capo. So E, okay? And so again, I'm going to recommend, like, let's say we go to a G chord. We're going to go to the 4th fret on the 3rd string with our middle finger on that. Then we're going to bring our ring finger up to the 5th string 5th fret and the 4th string 5th fret with our pinky. Then I want you to bar. And I highly recommend readjusting your first finger, trying to get it higher to the ceiling. Everybody's hand is different, but that tends to be the higher you go. Like I tend to have that first string like right in here. And that's going to be pretty helpful too when we make the minor version of this, which is just taking your middle finger off. So with the E minor shape, that 3rd string is the hardest one to get to ring. So you really want to make sure that's happening. Again, readjust that first finger so you can kind of make sure that the pressure is there. Because otherwise, it's just not, I mean, it's like a power chord at that point. It's not even a full bar chord. That's the only note that really makes that chord a minor chord. Now, sometimes you have to play the 6th string first, so obviously that's not going to work if you're fixing the other fingers before you fix your first finger. So another really good way to make these too is to, if you've ever made a power chord before, make the power chord, or at least your first finger. Then once you kind of got that, you can kind of clamp the rest down. And as far as my thumb goes, my thumb's always in the back of the neck, okay? So it's always kind of pinching right behind it, really making sure the pressure is nice and steady, okay? As far as the A shape goes, we're going to place our first finger on the 5th string and directly on the 5th string, only that. And then we're going to take our ring finger and play strings 4, 3, and 2 at the 5th fret. So right now I'm on the 3rd fret and the 5th fret. This is a C chord. Obviously you can place it anywhere. It's really good with this one. You can think dots or spaces. You always want to just see that negative space in between those 2 fingers. But what I'm doing again is I'm placing my first finger on that 5th string and I'm overextending it so it's hitting the side of that 5th string because you don't want that. And then I'm playing my ring finger and then making sure that this knuckle kind of pops up at the last second. You could include the 1st string, it would be the same fret as your first finger, but to really get that ring finger out of the way, just to get that one note is kind of way too much work than it's worth. What you do want to be careful though, if you don't do that, is you don't want to bar all the way and get that 6th chord. It's a cool chord, it's not what we're going for. So you just want to make sure that's muted, and that's often with my first and ring finger and or. And that way, if the 6th and the 1st string is muted, you can kind of strum the whole thing. The minor version of this is an A minor shape, and it's going to look exactly like the E shape, right? Because an E chord versus an A minor chord. So, you know, we're starting this one, and will have a full bar on your first finger. And this is probably one of the easiest ones to get going. Once you have these shapes going, a lot of students tend to kind of conflate them. It's confusing at first because they're kind of similar, kind of different, especially that E to A minor shape. So again, I would really recommend just thinking about, what does the open chord look like? You have an E, you have an E minor. You have an A, you have an A minor. Okay? So if you're on the 5th string, just think A. What's an A chord look like, or an A minor chord look like? If you're on the 6th string, it's what's the E or an E minor look like? Which brings us to the point of needing to know how to place these. So if you look at a neck of a guitar, most people don't know what those notes are. There's no indication whatsoever. But if you look at a piano, you can see white keys and black keys. Those white keys are referred to natural notes and go A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. And the black keys are known as sharps and flats, or accidentals. Okay? So for instance, if we're on an A and we want to go to a B, on the guitar that would be a whole step away because there's going to be a black key in between it. That black key can either be referred to as the lower note raised or sharp, or the higher note lowered or flatted. So for instance, this would be A sharp or B flat, okay? So when you call it one thing or the other is really a technicality of what key you're in. Don't get hung up on that just yet. But it's just good to know that there's a black key in between those. And if we take another look at the piano, you'll notice there are groups of black keys, and they go 2, 3, 2, 3, 3, 2 all day. And the reason being is because there are 2 white keys back to back with no black key in between them, and those are known as the natural half steps. And they are B to C and E to F, and they are absolutely the whole way you're going to be able to find your way around the neck. So they're so important to memorize. E to F and B to C are the natural half steps. What that translates to on the guitar is there's going to be no fret in between them. There's going to be the very next fret. So most notes are going to be 2 frets away, or a whole step, because you have to skip over a black key. Not B to C and E and F. Those are going to be the very next note, right? So if we either pretend like we got a 1-string guitar and we have an E string, that first fret is going to be F because there is no black key in between that, okay? So if we continue to pretend like this is a one-string guitar and climb up the neck, our next natural note is going to be a G, which is 2 frets away because there's a black key in between them. G to A is a whole step, A to B is a whole step, B to C is a half step, okay? C to D is a whole step, D to E is a whole step, and then, you know, you can go a little farther. I recommend going up to like the 15th fret, so E to F, F to G. And then be able to say it backwards. G, F, E, D, C, B, A, G, F. You're also going to need to be able to do this for the 5th string too, because that's how you're going to place your A shape. So let's try that. So we got an A to B is a whole step, B to C is a half step, C to D is a whole step, D to E is a whole step, E to F is a half step, F to G is a whole step, and G to A is a whole step. And we keep going, A to B, B to C is a half step, C, B, A, G, F, E, D, C, E. Okay, so it's a little bit of a process. It's kind of like saying the alphabet to figure out what comes after P, kind of a thing. So one thing that can help, music is a circle, so you don't want to just start at A. You can go backwards too. Like, so we just practice that, but literally thinking of the musical alphabet kind of like a building where the letters are stories. So the first floor is A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and A. So if I'm on an A string, I'm seeing the A's at the top floor and the bottom floor, and then somebody calls out a G, my brain, I immediately see that G right below the A, and so I know it's way easier to start from the 12th fret and work my way backwards to find that note. You can also start to memorize frets too. That's a whole thing. I found I kind of did it just by playing songs and playing that E minor so many times or whatever that I just knew where it was. So that's a really good thing to do too. But if you're taking the time to memorize the frets, you know, the 5th fret's a really good one to do because it's the same as the next string below it. So the 5th fret on the E string is an A. The 5th fret on the A string is a D. G and C is a good one at the 3rd fret. In 10th fret, whole step below your strings. A to G, D to C. Also, if you notice, the 7th and 8th fret on both strings happen to be natural half steps. So on the E string it was B and C, and on the A string it was E and F. So now that we know how to make the chords, and now we know how to find them, the quiz begins. You'll call out a chord, for instance, F sharp minor, and you just count up each string and find the shape. So I said minor, so we've kind of eliminated 2 of the options. Obviously, it has to be a minor. So we're going to start with E. E to F is a natural half step, and then we're on F. So we just need to raise that 1 fret to F sharp. So the 2nd fret would be F sharp, and then we're making a minor chord, so no middle finger. There's your first F sharp minor. Now, if we were to find it on the A string, go A, B, C, D, E, F. There's F. We're going to go 1 fret higher and make the minor there. So we now have 2 options for F sharp minor. If anybody asks, no problem, we got them. Right? Another thing I want to mention is a lot of students off the bat can conflate flats versus sharps and major and minor. So don't think flat equals minor. Those are 2 different things. Sharps and flats are the fret that you're going to find, okay? And then major or minor is the shape you're going to make off that fret. Huge distinction. Do not lose track of that. All right, that's pretty much all you need to know about how to make and place bar chords for pretty much any situation. If you're jamming with your friends, you're looking up tunes, you're going to be that much more self-sufficient. You're going to want to practice these. Obviously, it's going to take some time. Definitely play a song over and over again with specific chords and try to memorize them. Be conscious of what you're playing when you're playing them. That's very helpful. And if you need more practice, I highly recommend the playlist that I made. You can find it in the description below. I'll call out chords, you got to make them, or I'll play a chord, you got to guess. And if this was helpful for you, I appreciate you watching. Please like and subscribe, trying to grow the channel in 2024, and we'll see you next time.